Still single, Sarah? The voice made my blood run cold. I was mid-service in the economy cabin when I heard it, that familiar, condescending tone I'd worked so hard to forget. Ryan, my ex-boyfriend, on my flight. I turned slowly, tray of drinks trembling in my hands, and there he was. Same smug smile, same entitled expression, sitting in seat 24C like a ghost from a past I'd buried 2 years ago. Wow, he laughed, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Still serving drinks? I told you you'd never do better than me. What Ryan didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that the man sitting in seat 1A, the one who had been watching this entire exchange with dark, calculating eyes, was wearing my engagement ring on a chain around his neck. And he was about to make sure Ryan understood exactly how wrong he was. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start with Ryan boarding my Chicago to New York flight on a cold December morning. It starts 6 months earlier, on a routine first-class service that changed my entire life. Marcus Valentino. I'd served hundreds, maybe thousands, of first-class passengers in my 12 years as a flight attendant. Wealthy businessmen, celebrities, politicians. Most of them barely looked at me beyond a polite nod when I brought them their pre-departure champagne. But Marcus looked at me differently, like he actually saw me. He was a regular on the Chicago-San Francisco route, flying out every other week for business. Always seat 1A, always the same order: black coffee, no sugar, and whatever fresh fruit we had available. The first time I noticed him really noticing me was on a red-eye flight in June. I was exhausted, running on 4 hours of sleep, and I'd accidentally brought him coffee with sugar. "I'm so sorry," I said, reaching for the cup. "Let me get you a fresh one." His hand had stopped mine, gentle but firm. "It's fine. You look tired. When was the last time you had a full night's sleep?" It's been a while," I had admitted. "You worked too hard," he'd said, and there was something in his dark eyes that made my breath catch. Not pity. Something else. Concern. Genuine interest. After that, we started talking. Small conversations during boarding, brief exchanges during service. He learned that I lived alone in a small apartment in Lincoln Park, that I'd been flying for 12 years and still loved it most days, that I read mystery novels and collected vintage postcards from cities I'd visited. He told me that he'd built a tech company from nothing, sold it for an amount of money I couldn't quite comprehend, and now invested in startups. That he traveled constantly and found hotels lonely. That his last serious relationship had ended 3 years ago, and he hadn't been interested in anyone since. Until me. The first time he asked me out was in September. We were landing in San Francisco, and as I said goodbye to deplaning passengers, he'd handed me his business card. "Have dinner with me," he'd said. Not a question, but not quite a command either. An invitation that acknowledged I had the power to refuse. I should have said no. There were rules about fraternizing with passengers, unwritten but understood. But something about Marcus made me want to break those rules. "Okay," I'd whispered. That dinner turned into another, and another. Weekend trips when our schedules aligned, late-night phone calls when they didn't. Marcus was unlike anyone I'd ever dated. He was successful, yes, but not arrogant about it. Wealthy, but generous rather than flashy. He listened when I talked, remembered small details, made me feel like I mattered. The opposite of Ryan in every possible way. Ryan, who I dated for 2 miserable years before Marcus. Ryan, who had constantly criticized my job, my apartment, my choices, who'd made me feel grateful that someone like him would settle for someone like me. It had taken me months after leaving Ryan to remember my own worth, to stop hearing his voice in my head telling me I wasn't enough. And then Marcus had come along and shown me what it felt like to be cherished. 3 months ago, Marcus had proposed. Not with a grand public gesture or a flashy restaurant scene, but privately, in his Chicago penthouse with just the two of us and the city lights spread below like stars. "I want to spend my life with you, Sarah Bennett," he'd said, holding out a ring that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. "If you'll have me." I'd said yes through tears of joy. But we'd agreed to keep it quiet. Marcus's life came with media attention, public scrutiny. We wanted time to enjoy our engagement privately before dealing with all of that. So the ring stayed on a chain around his neck when we were apart and on my finger only when we were alone together. A secret between us, precious and protected. Until today. Until Ryan boarded my flight and decided to remind me of everything I supposedly never achieve. I forced my professional smile back into place, that mask I perfected over 12 years of dealing with difficult passengers. "Can I get you something to drink, sir?" I asked Ryan, voice pleasant but distant. "Come on, Sarah, don't be like that." He leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. "I'm just surprised to see you still doing this. How old are you now? 37, 38? Don't you think it's time to settle down, find a real career?" The passengers around us had gone quiet, watching this exchange with varying degrees of discomfort and interest. "This is my real career," I said evenly, "and I love it. Now, would you like something to drink or not?" "Just water," he said dismissively, then louder. "You know, I always told you that you could do better than this, but I guess some people are just meant to stay in their lane." I wanted to throw the water in his face, wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of his condescending nonsense, but I was working, professional, representing my airline. So I handed him his water with a tight smile and moved on, ignoring the burning shame crawling up my neck. I didn't realize Marcus had witnessed the entire exchange until I retreated to the forward gallery to compose myself. He appeared so quietly I didn't hear him approach. "Who is he?" I jumped, pressing my hand to my racing heart. Marcus stood in the gallery entrance, his expression carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. "A passenger," I said, automatically. "Sarah." His voice was gentle but insistent. "Who is he?" I exhaled slowly. "My ex-boyfriend, Ryan. We broke up 2 years ago." Something dark flickered across Marcus's face. "The one who made you feel like you weren't good enough?" I told him about Ryan, in bits and pieces over the months. How that relationship damaged my self-esteem. How I'd spent years rebuilding what Ryan had torn down. "Yes," I whispered. Marcus stepped closer, his hand coming up to cut my cheek with such tenderness that tears stung my eyes. "You are better than good enough, Sarah. You're extraordinary, and he's a fool who never deserved you." "I know that now," I said, leaning into his touch for just a moment before stepping back. "But it still hurts to hear him talk to me like that." "It won't hurt for much longer," Marcus said quietly, and there was something in his tone that made me look up sharply. "Marcus, don't do anything, please. He's not worth it." "I'm not going to do anything inappropriate," Marcus assured me, but his smile was sharp-edged. "I'm simply going to make sure he understands the truth, that you didn't just do better than him, you did infinitely better." Before I could respond, the call button chimed from the cabin, and I had to return to work. The rest of the flight was torture. Every time I passed Ryan's seat, he had some new comment, some fresh jab designed to make me feel small. "So, no ring on that finger, I see. I guess you never found anyone willing to commit." "You know, my new girlfriend is a lawyer. Real career. Not that there's anything wrong with what you do, of course. You remember when I said you should go back to school? Maybe it's not too late." And each comment landed like a small cut. Not deep enough to be obviously cruel, but sharp enough to sting. I caught Marcus watching from first class more than once, his expression growing darker with each of Ryan's remarks. Other flight attendants started to notice too. "Who's the jerk in 24C?" my colleague Jennifer whispered as we prepared the meal service. "He keeps making weird comments to you." "Just an ex," I muttered. "Ignore him." "Want me to accidentally spill something on him?" she offered with a wicked grin. I laughed despite myself. Tempting, but no. Just a few more hours and he'll be out of my life again. But I was wrong about that. As we began our descent into New York, the captain's voice came over the intercom with an announcement that made my heart sink. "Folks, we're experiencing some technical difficulties with our landing gear indicator. Nothing serious, but we'll need to circle for about 30 minutes while our maintenance team on the ground runs some diagnostics. We apologize for the delay." 30 more minutes with Ryan on this aircraft? Wonderful. The passengers groaned and settled in for the extended flight. I went through the cabin ensuring everyone was comfortable, trying to avoid Ryan's section. But of course, he called me over. "So we're going to crash, right? That's what technical difficulties means?" He said it loudly enough that nearby passengers tensed with anxiety. "Sir, we're perfectly safe," I said firmly. "This is a routine precaution. There's absolutely no danger." "Right, because you definitely know, being such an aviation expert and all." His sarcasm was thick. God, I can't believe I wasted 2 years on someone with so little ambition. And that was when something inside me snapped. "You know what, Ryan?" I said, voice low but steady. "You didn't waste anything on me. I wasted 2 years on you. 2 years of my life with someone who made me feel worthless, who criticized everything I did, everything I wanted to be, who convinced me I should be grateful someone like you would date someone like me. But I'm not that person anymore. I remember my worth now, and I found someone who sees it too, someone who values what I do, who I am, someone who treats me like I matter." "Oh yeah?" Ryan sneered, recovering his bravado. "And who's this mysterious someone? Let me guess, another flight attendant, a gate agent, someone equally going nowhere in life." "Actually," a deep voice said from behind me, "she's talking about me." I turned to find Marcus standing in the aisle, having walked back from first class. He looked calm, composed, but there was steel in his eyes. Ryan looked him up and down, clearly unimpressed. "And you are?" "Marcus Valentino," Marcus said simply, extending his hand with polite formality. Ryan's face went slightly pale. Even he had heard that name. Marcus's company was in the news constantly when it sold, and his investments were regularly featured in business publications. "The Marcus Valentino?" Ryan stammered. "The same," Marcus confirmed. Then he turned to me, his expression softening. "Sarah, I know we agreed to wait, to keep things private, but I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to hide what you mean to me." My breath caught. "Marcus, what are you—" He reached under his collar and pulled out the chain he always wore. My engagement ring caught the cabin lights, diamond sparkling. The passengers around us had gone completely silent, watching this unfold like a movie scene. "I've been carrying this for 3 months, Marcus said, taking my hand, "waiting for the right time. But there is no right time. There's just now, and the woman I love, and the truth." He slipped the ring off the chain and with gentle certainty slid it onto my finger where it belonged. "Sarah Bennett, you are the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Your compassion, your strength, your kindness, they humble me every day. I am honored that you said yes, and I'm done hiding it." Tears blurred my vision as I looked down at the ring, finally where it was supposed to be. "Marcus." He turned to Ryan, who sat frozen in his seat, face red with humiliation and shock. "To answer your earlier question, yes, Sarah found someone. She found someone who recognizes that her work isn't a limitation, but a reflection of her dedication and service. Someone who sees her passion for travel and connection as a gift. Someone who knows that her worth has nothing to do with her job title and everything to do with who she is." Marcus's voice grew colder. And she didn't just find someone better than you, she found someone who actually deserves her. Though, to be fair, that's an incredibly low bar to clear. The cabin erupted. Passengers who'd been listening started clapping, someone whistled, a woman across the aisle said, "Best in-flight entertainment ever." Ryan sputtered, trying to find words, but Marcus wasn't finished. "I suggest you spend the rest of this flight reflecting on how you treat people, because the way you've spoken to Sarah today says far more about your character than it ever could about hers." Then he took my hand, the one now wearing my engagement ring, and kissed my knuckles gently. "I'll be in 1A when you're ready. Take your time." He walked back to first class, leaving me standing in the aisle with my hand sparkling and my heart so full I thought it might burst. Ryan wouldn't look at me. The other passengers were grinning, giving me thumbs up and congratulatory nods. Jennifer appeared at my elbow, eyes wide. "Did that really just happen?" she whispered. "I think so," I whispered back. "Girl, you need to tell me everything later, but right now, go. Go to first class, I'll cover the rest of service." I didn't need to be told twice. I walked forward through the aircraft on shaking legs. We gave one interview to a respectful journalist who focused on our actual relationship, rather than treating it like a fairy tale or scandal. I talked about how we'd met, how Marcus had seen past my uniform to the person beneath, how he'd helped me heal from past relationship damage and remember my own worth. Marcus talked about how my compassion and dedication had attracted him, how watching me work, caring for passengers, solving problems, creating small moments of comfort in a stressful environment had shown him who I really was. My airline was surprisingly supportive. The employee newsletter did feature our story, framed as a reminder that flight attendants are professionals, deserving of respect, and capable of building meaningful connections. My parents called, crying happy tears and wanting to know when they could meet Marcus properly. My sister demanded wedding planning responsibilities. My friends from training 15 years ago sent a group text that was mostly key smash excitement and heart emojis. And through it all, Marcus was exactly who he'd always been: calm, supportive, proud to be with me. We set a wedding date for the following June. Small, intimate, with close family and friends rather than the media circus we could have had. I kept flying because I loved it, though I reduced my hours to spend more time with Marcus. He adjusted his travel schedule when possible to fly routes I was working on, always requesting seat 1A, always ordering black coffee and fresh fruit. Some things we decided were too good to change. The ring stayed on my finger now, visible and proud. Passengers occasionally recognized me from the viral story and offered congratulations. I accepted with grace and gratitude, no longer embarrassed by the attention. I never saw Ryan again, never heard from him after that flight. According to mutual acquaintances, he had been briefly humiliated when the story went viral. His behavior on that flight captured in enough detail to make him identifiable. But mostly, I just stopped thinking about him, stopped letting him occupy any space in my mind or heart. He'd been a chapter in my story, yes, but he wasn't the story itself. That story was still being written, with Marcus, with love, with a future that looked nothing like I'd imagined when I first put on my flight attendant uniform 12 years ago, but everything I'd unconsciously hoped for. One evening, about 2 months after that flight, Marcus and I were having dinner at his penthouse apartment. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, snow falling gently against the glass. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly. "Going public like that? We could have kept things private longer." Marcus set down his wine glass and reached across the table for my hand. "I regret exactly one thing about that day." "What's that?" "That I waited so long to tell the world you were mine. That I let you endure even 5 minutes of that man's disrespect before I stepped in." "You were respecting our agreement," I pointed out. "We both wanted privacy." "Privacy, yes, but not at the cost of your dignity." His thumb brushed across my ring. "You know what I've learned from all this?" "What?" "That some things are too important to hide. Love, commitment, partnership. These aren't things to be ashamed of or tucked away. They're things to be celebrated, proclaimed, defended. I squeezed his hand, throat tight with emotion. When did you get so wise? He said simply, when I met a flight attendant who taught me that true strength looks like service, that grace under pressure is its own kind of power, that the most valuable people are often the ones others overlook. We finished dinner and moved to the couch, curled together watching the snowfall. And I thought about journeys, about destinations, about all the unexpected places life can take you. 6 months ago, I'd been a flight attendant going through the motions, competent, professional, but not truly happy. Then Marcus had walked onto my aircraft, into my life, and reminded me what it felt like to be cherished. And now here we were, planning a wedding, building a life, creating something beautiful together. All because I was brave enough to say yes to dinner. All because he was patient enough to wait for me to trust again. All because we'd both been willing to risk our hearts on something real. The engagement ring on my finger caught the light from the city below, sparkling like a promise, like a future, like everything I'd ever wanted, but never quite believed I deserved. Ryan had been wrong about so many things, but he'd been most wrong about this, that I'd never find better than him. Because I hadn't just found better, I'd found everything. And I'd learned that my worth wasn't something someone else could grant or take away. It had always been there, inherent and unshakable, waiting for me to recognize it. Marcus had helped me see it, but it had always been mine. Just like the life we were building together, the love we shared, the future stretching before us like an endless runway, ready for takeoff. The wedding day came in June, as planned. The reception was dinner at Marcus's favorite Italian restaurant, the one where we'd had our first date. Good food, good wine, lots of laughter and love. Jennifer and other flight attendant friends came, trading stories about our viral proposal that still made me blush. Marcus's business partners congratulated him and told embarrassing stories from their startup days. My father gave a toast about how he'd always known I'd find someone who appreciated my strength. My sister cried through her entire speech about sisterhood and love. And Marcus's brother ended the toast by saying simply, I've never seen my brother happier. Sarah, thank you for giving him something to come home to. Later, as we danced our first dance as husband and wife, Marcus pulled me close and whispered, no regrets? Not a single one, I assured him. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. We swayed together and I thought about timing, about how sometimes the right person comes along exactly when you need them, not before. If I'd met Marcus while I was still with Ryan, I wouldn't have been ready. I wouldn't have believed I deserved someone like him. But those 2 years alone, healing and rebuilding, had been necessary. They taught me to stand on my own, to find my worth independent of anyone else's opinion. So when Marcus came along, I could meet him as an equal, as a partner, not as someone looking to be saved, but as someone ready to build something together. The timing had been perfect after all. We honeymooned in Italy, Marcus's ancestral homeland. 2 weeks of cobblestone streets, ancient architecture, incredible food, and lazy afternoons in bed. No schedules, no obligations, just us, exploring and laughing and falling more deeply in love with each passing day. I could get used to this, I said one evening as we sat in a small cafe in Rome, sharing wine and watching the sunset paint the city gold. Then let's do it more often, Marcus suggested. You don't have to fly as much as you do. We could travel together, see the world. I considered it. I did love flying, but I loved it for the travel, the connection, the sense of purpose. Maybe there were other ways to fulfill those needs. I think I'd like that, I said slowly. Maybe reduce to part-time flying, spend more time traveling for pleasure rather than work. Whatever makes you happy, Marcus said, and I knew he meant it. He'd never tried to change me or my career. He'd only ever supported what I wanted. That support meant everything. We returned from our honeymoon, tanned, relaxed, and utterly happy. I did reduce my flying schedule, going from full-time to part-time. It gave me time to explore other interests. I started a travel blog that gained a surprising following, began volunteering with an organization that helped women leaving difficult relationships. I used my own experience with Ryan to help others recognize the warning signs of controlling behavior, to remember their worth when someone tried to diminish it. Marcus continued his work, but made sure his travel aligned with mine when possible. We bought a place in San Francisco to complement his Chicago penthouse, splitting our time between cities. Life found its rhythm. Different than before, but good. Really good. And then one day, about a year after our wedding, I was working a flight to Los Angeles. It was routine, familiar, the kind of service I could do in my sleep, until a passenger in economy called me over during drink service. "Excuse me, miss. I'm sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to say, you're Sarah Valentino, right? The flight attendant who married the tech billionaire?" I smiled, used to this by now. "Yes, that's me." The woman, maybe in her mid-20s, looked nervous. I wanted to thank you. I saw your story online about leaving your ex and finding yourself before meeting your husband. It helped me leave my own bad relationship, reminded me that I deserved better." My throat tightened. "I'm so glad. Are you doing okay now?" "I'm getting there. It's hard, but your story gave me hope that there's something better on the other side." After she deplaned in LA, I found myself crying in the galley. Happy tears, grateful tears. Because that was what it had all been about, really. Not the viral proposal or the fairy tale wedding or the wealthy husband, but the journey from believing I wasn't enough to knowing that I was. From accepting disrespect to demanding better. From hiding my worth to celebrating it. If my story could help even one person make that same journey, then every moment of it had been worth it. That evening, I told Marcus about the passenger. "You're making a difference," he said, pulling me close, "just by being yourself, by sharing your story honestly." "Our story," I corrected. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have," he said seriously. "You already were. I just had the privilege of being there to witness it." "Partners," I echoed. We renewed our vows that day, right there in the garden. No guests this time, just us and the minister who'd married us originally, and the roses and the lake, and the love we'd built over 10 years. The vows were different this time, informed by a decade of marriage, of learning each other, of growing together. "I promise to continue choosing you, even when it's hard, even when we disagree, even when life throws challenges our way. I promise to be honest with you, to trust you, to build this life with you one day at a time. I promise to honor who you are, not who I wish you were, to celebrate your victories and comfort you in defeats, to be your safe place always, and to remind you of your worth whenever you forget." We kissed as the sun set over the lake, and I felt the same rush of joy I'd felt 10 years ago, the same certainty, the same peace. This was where I was meant to be, with this man, in this life, building this love. "Best decision I ever made," Marcus said seriously. "I regret a lot of things in my life, Sarah. Business deals that went wrong, relationships I stayed in too long, risks I didn't take, but claiming you publicly, telling the world you were mine, I will never, ever regret that." Even though it went viral, especially because it went viral, because it meant everyone got to see what I saw, that you're extraordinary, that your worth has nothing to do with your job or your past or anyone else's opinion, that you're valuable, worthy, deserving of respect and love and partnership. I blinked back tears. Even after 10 years, Marcus could still reduce me to emotional mush with the right words. "I love you," I said simply. "I love you too. Always have, always will." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the Chicago skyline coming into view as we approached the city. I thought about the girl I'd been when I met Ryan, young, insecure, looking for someone to tell her she mattered. Then I thought about the woman I'd been when I met Marcus, healing, growing, learning to find her own worth. And finally, I thought about who I was now, confident, secure, complete in myself while still choosing to share my life with someone I loved. The journey had been worth it. Every painful moment, every lesson learned, every step forward and occasional step back. Because it had led me here, to this life, to this love, to this version of myself I was proud to be. Ryan was wrong about so many things, but he was most spectacularly wrong about this, that I'd never find better than him. Because the truth was, the moment I left Ryan, I found better. I found myself. And then when I was ready, I found Marcus. Not as someone to provide validation, but as someone to share it with, to build with, to love and be loved by. That had completed the picture. Because the truth was, I didn't need Marcus to be worthy. I was already worthy. But choosing to share my life with someone who recognized that worth, celebrated it, protected it, that made everything richer, deeper, more meaningful. A decade, he said, shaking his head in wonder. It simultaneously feels like forever and no time at all. I know exactly what you mean. Do you remember what I said in my vows? That you'd showed me love is about quiet moments and steady commitment. I remember. I still believe that, he said, but I'd add something now. Love is also about growth, about becoming better people together than we were apart. I pulled back to look at him. You think we're better together? I know we are. You've made me more patient, more thoughtful, more aware of how I use my privilege and power. And I hope I've helped you see your own strength more clearly. You have, I assured him. You've been my mirror when I couldn't see myself clearly, my anchor when I felt adrift, my biggest cheerleader and my gentlest critic. Partners, he said simply. Partners, I echoed. We renewed our vows that day, right there in the garden. No guests this time. Just us and the minister who'd married us originally, and the roses and the lake, and the love we'd built over 10 years. The vows were different this time, informed by a decade of marriage, of learning each other, of growing together. I promise to continue choosing you, even when it's hard, even when we disagree, even when life throws challenges our way. I promise to be honest with you, to trust you, to build this life with you one day at a time. I promise to honor who you are, not who I wish you were, to celebrate your victories and comfort you in defeats, to be your safe place always, and to remind you of your worth whenever you. We kissed as the sun set over the lake, and I felt the same rush of joy I'd felt 10 years ago, the same certainty, the same peace. This was where I was meant to be, with this man, in this life, building this love. Best decision I ever made, Marcus said seriously. I regret a lot of things in my life, Sarah. Business deals that went wrong, relationships I stayed in too long, risks I didn't take. But claiming you publicly, telling the world you were mine, I will never, ever regret that. Even though it went viral, especially because it went viral, because it meant everyone got to see what I saw, that you're extraordinary, that your worth has nothing to do with your job or your past or anyone else's opinion, that you're valuable simply because you exist. I blinked back tears. Even after 10 years, Marcus could still reduce me to emotional mush with the right words. I love you, I said simply. I love you too. Always have. Always will. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the Chicago skyline coming into view as we approached the city. I thought about the girl I'd been when I met Ryan, young, insecure, looking for someone to tell her she mattered. Then I thought about the woman I'd been when I met Marcus, healing, growing, learning to find her own worth. And finally, I thought about who I was now, confident, secure, complete in myself while still choosing to share my life with someone I loved. The journey had been worth it. Every painful moment, every lesson learned, every step forward and occasional step back, because it had led me here, to this life, to this love, to this version of myself I was proud to be. Ryan had been wrong about so many things, but he'd been most spectacularly wrong about this, that I'd never find better than him. Because the truth was, the moment I left Ryan, I found better. I found myself. And then, when I was ready, I found Marcus. Not because I needed him to complete me, but because I was already complete and ready to share that completeness with someone who appreciated it. That was the real victory, the real triumph. Not the viral proposal or the fairy tale wedding or the happy marriage, but the journey from not knowing my worth to celebrating it, from accepting less than I deserved to demanding better, from believing someone else's lies about me to knowing my own truth. And if I could go back and tell that girl who was dating Ryan anything, it would be this: you are enough, right now, exactly as you are. The job you love doesn't make you less. The dreams you chase don't make you foolish. The kindness you show doesn't make you weak. You are valuable, worthy, deserving of respect and love and partnership. And one day, you'll meet someone who sees all of that clearly. But more importantly, you'll see it yourself. And that will change everything.